Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now, for you, it's probably been just a few days or so since you saw the last video. For me, I think it's been about a week and a half since I recorded a new episode. We had services for Mr. Syd Mead this last Sunday. I guess, 2 Sundays ago. And it was very beautiful and interesting. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, if you're brand new, the amazing visual futurist who invented the title, as a matter of fact, Syd Mead, SYDMEAD.com, has passed as of the end of last year at a beautiful age of 86. I had the privilege of working with him for 20 years. He's an amazing human being on every conceivable metric. One of the nicest guys, one of the most brilliant guys. And this is kind of what this episode's all about, is this notion about man's sort of immature desire to live forever. And because we never really talk about it in that sense, we know we all die. At least our bodies do. Now you're listening to someone talk to you that believes we live forever in a different sense. I guess what I am addressing in this particular episode is the notion of living forever as a human being, which I think is a bad idea. But there's so many little phrases out there that talk about this whole concept, and one of them is, in order to truly appreciate something, you have to lose it. Or at a minimum, it must be a rare thing. Why do we like gold bars and diamonds and other precious jewels? Because it's rare. Why do we love certain people and other people we just like them? Because they're rare. I'm in a weird position where if I want to mention something about somebody famous, then I can't. You guys haven't done it really, but it does enter that realm of the name dropping thing. But I want to give you a story that happened at the services, and I want to tell you who did it because he deserves credit for being way more brilliant than some people realize, and as brilliant as some folks realize they can't even conceive. So a few years back, Mr. Kanye West, who is a prodigy in many categories of life, if you don't think he is, then you don't get him. That's all I can tell you. And it's not just his ability to write incredible stories in his songs, but to create and produce the most amazing beats and music. And he saved people's careers that are huge names. And he has endeavored. Now, he also experiments, so you may not like every single track he's ever done or whatever. But he and Syd made friends a few years back. And it was through a mutual friend that someone was going to see Syd. And he said, "Oh man, can I tag along? I love Syd." And Syd, Kanye is very, very well aware of incredible design because Kanye has style as a human being, which I'm still determining whether or not you can be born without it and gain it. Part of me thinks you can't. But he's got it. And so, when they met, it was interesting because I know that Syd has no clue. Sorry, I don't mean to say clue, but he has no idea what Kanye's music sounds like, what Kanye's really done with his life, save just reading an article here and there. He's done some fashion. He's done playing music. He's done all kinds of stuff. And I wasn't present during any of their conversations, but Syd sent me a photograph of the two of them posing in his house, which I thought was fantastic. And the entire time I've known Syd, he's worked for Michael Jackson. Syd has worked for Michael Jackson 2 or 3 times. He knows all, got a chance to work with Tom Cruise. I mean, he's been around celebrities his whole life with incredible directors like Ridley Scott, you know. And, you know, he doesn't have any negative stories about those individuals, but this one just really stood out for him. And when I went over to visit Syd after one of his conversations with Kanye, Syd was like, man, this kid is really intelligent, man. I said, yeah, isn't he? He's like, yes, he was so polite and brilliant, and he was just really on a different plane. And I said, yes, exactly. And so, you know, I knew that there was a chance that Kanye would show up at the services just because he's very respectful. Now, unfortunately, about 2 hours before the services started, Kobe Bryant died in a helicopter accident along with his 13-year-old daughter and the other 7 individuals plus the pilot, co-pilot, right? So 5 and 2 more. Horrific situation. And I want to make it clear because there's all kinds of weird conspiracies around the pharmaceutical company that was trying to go after his Black Mamba name. It really looks like the pilot realized the weather was bad, too bad to be driving or flying an aircraft, and he brought the vehicle down about 1,200 feet. And there's been pilots in the area think that they know exactly what the guy was trying to do because he's very aware of the terrain that he was trying to fly to a helicopter pad that's a part of a police precinct. And unfortunately, he turned left a mile before he was supposed to. And if he had turned left in a mile, the mountain terrain that he ran into wasn't there. And so it was just a really horrific situation. So all this information is coming to Kanye, and we don't know. We're sitting in the service. We have no idea that this has occurred. And there was a moment when everyone was allowed to go up and speak and say something. I put myself on the list, and my name wasn't called. But then I thought about, you know, everyone said everything I would have said pretty much. But they kind of had indicated that all of the speakers were done. And the man who started the services, I don't know who the guy is, but he's brilliant. He kind of looked over and he was like, because I'm right in the front. And it's outside. It's beautiful. We're looking at a big, beautiful picture of Syd. I'll give you a photograph. But Kanye went up to the podium. I didn't see him arrive because he had arrived a little bit later. And he was extremely apologetic about arriving late. But I don't think anyone would consider him being late. But anyhow, he got up there and spoke beautifully. I mean, you've never seen Kanye speak this beautiful that I've ever seen on camera. But he really talked about how important it is that people like Syd exist. Because without Syd, and people had said versions of this, but Kanye's was really beautiful. He just said, you know, people like Syd are very important because he designs our future and he gives us a glimpse into what might be a utopia. And then Kanye said something I thought was utterly brilliant. And if you diehard listeners are listening, it's just like an aha moment, man. He said, you know, I think utopia has turned into a dirty word or a bad word. And he goes, what a shame that is, right? And this all relates back to people like Syd creating these visions of the future that we should use to guide ourselves into the future. You know, Syd has designed your future, whether or not you realize it or not. It doesn't matter if we have an apocalypse and then we reinvent ourselves. Someone will find Syd's work and go, make it look just like that, you know. But we're all in this service, you know, missing an amazing man. And so at that point, you know, the rarity of Syd, which is 1 in 8 billion, really starts to, I mean, we all kind of knew it, you know, we definitely appreciated Syd while he was alive, but who sits around looking at your friend thinking, oh, when you're dead, this is how I'm going to think about you. There are so many, comic book characters and fictional book characters that go back to the beginning of time about human beings that were immortal. The whole Adam and Eve thing, they were immortal until, certain beings have the ability to stay immortal if they do certain things. Like a vampire could live for a really long time if he's constantly draining someone. There's been the funny takes on, these pharaohs, either female or male pharaohs. Usually it's the female pharaoh who lives into, forever because she constantly sucks life out of something. And then there's the real world objectives of trying to live forever. Kurzweil, who wants to perfect a computer such that he can upload his consciousness into it and live in it forever. Kurzweil at one point, he was just taking pills for a living. For eating. He wasn't eating any foods. He was just taking tons of pills, and then he got extremely sick and almost died from it. It is amazing how utterly brilliant people can be and how utterly stupid they can be. You just get indoctrinated into your own bullshit, and then you just continue. It's really weird. Miss Possum's over there. There's if the record industry weren't a bunch of douchebags, I would have started this episode off with the Queen song about living forever. Do we really want to live a really long time? Some of it might be interesting. If you're, I would say maybe below 40, it might seem more appealing the closer you get back to your youth. And as you get older, you may have a subplot that says, yeah, let's go ahead and live another, 50 years, maybe another 100 years, without losing your eyesight and your walking capabilities and all that stuff. We're talking about living a healthy life, right? You'll read article after article, and I have to tell you, the younger that you are, this means a different thing, but the older that you are, the more you laugh. For instance, let me give you a parallel analogy for this whole thing. I have read since the mid-'80s in Omni magazine when I was a kid that they were going to auction off trips to the moon for orbital purposes only and to bring you back to Earth. Every single decade, some ridiculous organization says that they're selling these tickets. They sell the tickets. They talk about having sold the tickets. These billionaires put their money in, $170 million to go around the moon, and it's never happened. Not unless they're using a completely different space program than we're aware of. It just happened again. Someone just posted, and thank you for posting it because it proves my point. But you'll read these articles about how we're inventing youth serums and how we're going to live forever and all this stuff. Let's really parse that for just 1 second. There's no doubt that they can start to identify things that are causing us to get older, such as the end-caps of your chromosomes or the latest theory. We do know that adrenochromes are used to really maintain a very healthy appearance up to a certain point. But haven't you seen your favorite king or queen or rich oligarch get really old? Look at George Soros' last photographs. My God. He is like that dude from the end of Indiana Jones whose face is fucking melting and he just kind of pushed pause, That guy looks like shit. Now, the Queen of England always looks pretty amazing, but she does age, right? So if all these people have these youth serums at the tippy top of the pyramid, then we aren't seeing any evidence of it. Maybe there's a Habsburg somewhere or Rothschild. Look at Jacob Rothschild. He was getting old before he disappeared off the planet. Where are all these youth serums? Man, the Windsor family can't find a solution for hair loss yet. The first son lost all of his hair. He's in full convertible mode. His father had, his little bald patch on the back. At least they could fix the bald patch, right? You don't think Donald Trump could find it somewhere on planet Earth? He's got all of his hair, but boys, I don't know what's going on with that hairdo. That dude looks younger every day. Here's the problem with living forever. I think you would go insane fairly quickly based on forever, right? But let's just say we can take a pill and live 300, 400, 500 years, something on that order. Now, Syd Mead comes back into play here because I think he made one of the most accurate observations of man's ability to conceive of the future. Remember, this guy designed the future at a level that no one ever has and may never again. And I don't mean necessarily his designs are accurate to what they will be in the future. If you listen to Syd talk about how he thinks in order to create the future, he is looking at millions of metrics of human consciousness, culture, history, all the vectors of all things as it is perceived by man, such that when he draws something on paper, he is calculating sort of like a pass in football. He's calculating where your brain will be when his image hits the screen in a particular environment, whether it be Blade Runner or Tron or Elysium or whatever. He is thinking about absolutely everything. He was a Nikola Tesla in terms of designing the future. In that, Tesla would always design machines in his brain. He would age ball bearings for 2 years just to figure out whether or not he should change their gauge or something. Syd was probably that with a few orders of magnitude over in terms of how he determined what we would accept as a design. And what's interesting is, and what I would love to see, and I won't be able to see it necessarily, is that he has designed things that we don't have propulsion systems to realize just yet. But it'll be interesting to see if his designs actually are caught. The past is caught in the future where people go, wow, that is exactly the way it should look like right now. Maybe back then they thought it was corny. Maybe back then they thought it was unrealistic. But right now, that's exactly how it should look. And maybe Syd's world is realized 100%. Why mention Syd right now? Well, he has always said, this is one of the first conversations I ever had with him. He said, I think that the furthest that man can conceive out from today is about 300 years. Beyond 300 years, all of the circumstances that would affect the mind's perception and, what are other propulsion systems? How do we use clothing? How is technology integrated with the humanity? Where is humanity in the solar system / universe / galaxy? All these things become so frayed in 300 years. The predicting out is beyond that point is really just a crapshoot. It's random. And so living beyond that point introduces a bunch of obstacles and challenges that we have not solved because we've never been there before. Now, those of you who believe biblical things, well, it could be. It could be that we ate all natural foods and we didn't screw up our blood types and by malnutrition, and we didn't do a bunch of other stuff, move around and just gag our whole ecosystem of what the human body wants. Maybe we did live a long time. But I do think that an individual who would live, say, a biblical 800 years, 900 years, 1,000 years, would have left a fingerprint behind because their IQ would have developed so intensely, I guess you could say, unintentionally, that it would leave an indelible mark on the world. And maybe that's what happened. Maybe the people that designed the pyramids were, 800 years old. They had discovered pi long before the Greeks. So they discovered pi. They discovered the Pythagoras theorem before Pythagoras was even a concept of existence. It's proven. Just look at the pyramids, man. So if at this stage we started to live a really long time, and it's not exactly the focus of this episode, imagine that you're 100 years old, but you look like you're 35 or 45 or whatever. You look fine. You feel fine. A little bit of aches and pains, whatever. How do you digest seeing your great, 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 great grandchildren that have nothing to do with you in terms of being in common with you because they're in their infantile stage, stuck in a cultural envelope that you have sort of floated over because you come from a culture of, say, like, take me. I was born in the last year of the 60s, 69. So my definition of youth and childhood, and it's probably, I don't know, underdeveloped view at 50, having not lived 100 years, 150 years, etc., would be the 70s and the 80s were amazing. Maybe I'm wrong. Most people agree with me who grew through those eras and now see what's happening with the world. Now, if you were doing it by yourself and everyone else is dying at a normal age, that would just be rough, you know. Again, I have two gentlemen just a few generations back that lived 100 years apiece, over 100 years apiece. So two guys, father and son, they eclipsed 205 years, man. One of them had 3 wives. I think one of them at least had 2, but I think he had 3 as well because their wives passed away. That's rough, man. But let's just talk about anyone out there listening to this who's thought about how romantic it would be to be immortal. One, I don't know how you remain immortal in this universe because eventually, even with whatever, I don't know. Well, I guess there's some belief systems where you would, I guess, live till Judgment Day, or you would live till the firmament dome was opened up and God would come get you, whatever. But if you were remotely believing this was scientific and this was not, I don't mean without design and without intent, the matrix turns off, or but let's just take a heliocentric normal thing just to drive a point home, not to offend anybody else. But something might take out planet Earth. Planet Earth, in my opinion, will continue expanding until the crust ruptures and it turns into a gas giant, just like all the other gas giants that aren't baby planets. They're actually ancient planets. What are you going to do? You're going to float around? You're going to sink to the middle of this thing? You're going to be zapped on the ball of plasma? I mean, like, what are you going to do? You're going to create a vehicle and get the hell out of here? What if it's impossible? You're going to swim through the ether of space? I mean, my God, what a terrifying notion that might be, right? Living forever obviously comes with a lot of requirements, right? As the Twilight Zone, where the man signed the deal with the devil, it taught us you would have to be invincible. You would not need to eat or breathe, which would remove a lot of other activities in your life. Or maybe you could and it wouldn't matter if you didn't. But there comes a point, and I've mentioned this several times in several different episodes, but it really hit me when, saying goodbye to a friend recently. I think that there's something beautiful about the way that perhaps we have designed the universe. That our souls have this infinite property. Because nothing can collide with your soul. Your soul doesn't need to feed off things that are in short supply, right? You can starve to death in a human body, but you can't starve to death necessarily as a soul. You might get very lonely. Again, maybe hell is nothing more than being isolated away from all the other souls for a certain amount of time while you figure out what you did. Maybe there is no punishment whatsoever because by the time we pass away, the context of your life was a mere instance of your life, and it in the realm of infinity, you realize if anything is of a certain static size compared to infinity, then it is infinitely small. And so, what's one instance of being Hitler when you can spend the rest of your time being Gandhi? Okay. Now, do I think that dying young is what we're talking about in here in terms of the opposite argument? Absolutely not. I do think that there are tons of things that we get to experience on this planet, but then at the same time, if we were to be reincarnating and living in this roller coaster, and there's probably roller coasters all over the matrix of which you can ride, and it could be a beam of light one day, just to be really abstract about it. You could stay in your soul form for a while. Do whatever you want. Maybe we're all just trees, These stages that we go through in life that are amplified by loss. And loss is all over the place, if you really think about it, right? We are born and we are welcomed into this world by our family members. My great grandmother on my mother's side got to meet me. My grandfather on my father's side, meaning his father, got to meet me. But both were gone before I turned 3. I mean, my grandfather, my father's side, I guess he had died, about when I was about 2.5 or something like that. He saw me as a little kid, though. He got to meet me. It was cool. So you do lose your oldest family members right off the bat. And then you get a nice buffer of 20 to 30 plus years where hopefully your grandparents aren't too old and you can get to know them as well. I was very fortunate. The first grandparent that ever passed from me, I was 25 years old. But it was a big bummer because it was the grandparent that I was the most closest with, my father's mother. Her and I were best friends, man. And what was interesting is I am starting my life as this rocket ship of my life started to take off and amazing things were happening. My daughter was on the way and I was unable to go to her funeral, it's very important to me to see someone out of this world and respect them. I couldn't go because my kid was potentially going to show up here any day. And so I had to miss it. And later on I found out I could have gone, but it was literally, services were the end of January 1995, and my kid was here within 2 weeks. So it was definitely a close call. But like I always tell my friends, if I was at a funeral when my daughter was born, my grandmother would have come out of that grave and swatted me. Okay, so you lose your family members as you get older. All right, well, depending on how close you are, that's a big deal or it's not a big deal. Now, typically your parents will go quite a distance before you pass away, and some of you have really older parents, so that can be more immediate, and that's a shame. My father lost his dad when he was 23 years old, so imagine that he died of a heart attack. He had a congenital problem that was specifically for him, like no one inherited it, and so he lost his dad really early, which is a lot of mentorship missing from his life. I really, as I grew up, was really sad that my father didn't have that. But what else do you lose? You lose your naivete. You lose your bliss. You lose things like believing in magic. In a very fun, harmless way. Magic. Each one of those changes, each one of those deltas in your life, it's a mini funeral, you could say. You'll never be that young again. You'll never experience that particular thing in that particular frame of mind at that particular place in life. And I'll tell you this, I haven't been able to John Malkovich any of you, but which if you don't understand that reference, go see the movie Being John Malkovich. But I haven't been inside your mind, so I can't quite perfectly tell this, but I think that one of the curses of a really sharp memory and a very early point of remembering your life, that is, if you are fond of your childhood, if you're fond of your earlier memories, and you really remember them, then that funeral has more tears. It has the bagpipes, Which if you haven't been to a funeral with bagpipes, you've never felt your soul cry before. Holy mackerel. But I really, really remember my youth. And I really remember, even though my parents were getting divorced at one point, bad things were happening to me, technically speaking, in terms of other people observing the situation and going, oh, that's really sad that I had to go through. I found ways of having a lot of fun. Amazing things happen. And I remember it. And I've shared most of all of them with you. And so even without dying, parts of my history are nothing but memories And to think that as I've watched my friends and family members get old and pass away, I think one of the because this doesn't always happen, and sometimes you get a relapse of what I'm about to say. But as your body stops, interfacing with your soul in an efficient manner, because it's degrading, right? You start to lose those priceless memories sometimes. Like some people can't remember those things, and some folks can only remember the past. One of my girlfriend's aunts, she went through this. She lived into her 90s, so she lived a great life. But she was always very, very conservative, never drank alcohol. And there was this moment when she was in her assisted living. I don't think she ever was quite in hospice because she was always mobile and what have you. But they said that she was talking about having been to a nightclub with jazz, which is a little strange because she was actually a girl that was probably in her 40s, about the time that jazz was really popular in the 50s, or late 30s at least. But she was talking about wanting to get another margarita, which is just endearing and wonderful. Everybody in the room was like, oh my God, that's kind of cool. She never drank a drop of alcohol the whole time we knew her. And so in her dementia, however the body was interacting with the soul and its storage system out there in the universe, she was able to go back in her past and live it so vibrantly that she desired it for a split second. It was like a cornerstone in her moment, in her life, that was so positive she wanted to do it again. But she never did it as an adult that we know of. I mean, getting a margarita in my hometown, it's much easier today, but 50s, 60s, 70s, I'm not even sure where the hell you would go in the Midwest to get one. Maybe I'm just being stupid, but it's interesting. I don't think any one of us want to really accept the paradox of we have to lose something in order to appreciate it. Because at an absolute statement, that is not true, obviously. There's plenty of times in my life, and I'm sure in your life, where you had something that you, either a circumstance, you had a job you loved, you had whatever, you had a girlfriend, boyfriend that you loved, a husband, wife, whatever, someone very special in your life, child, whatever, and something happened and they were taken away from you. Circumstances change. The bankers crash the banks and take away all of your opportunity in life. And you watch it disappear. Maybe even in some rare cases, you know it's coming. Because I was awake in 2008 and 7 and 6 and 5, I knew the crash was coming. Didn't know exactly what month, but by mid 08, I knew it was going to happen in December. And sure enough, boom. And I watched my beautiful company wither because my clients disappeared. When you have tons of clients, it's almost inconceivable that your company can disappear. And it happened. Now, we got a lot of amazing things done after 2008, but boy, the budgets were small. People were very antsy about, innovating because they realized they had a limited amount of cash themselves. It's a bummer, man. So we're in this constant cycle, aren't we? We're constantly saying goodbye to friends and family because it happens. It happens randomly. I mean, imagine this. I didn't mean to integrate Kobe's horrible situation into this episode, but isn't that interesting? A 41-year-old basketball prodigy, and by all means, celebrated individual, is gone. And that's something that everyone can just immediately mourn. And then you hear the extra news about the other 8 people, including a 13-year-old daughter and some other young children, I believe, which were friends of the family that were also on the helicopter that don't even get mentioned by most people. That's sad, man, right? But now, how many of us, and I can definitely tell you, was it Shaq was talking about the loss of Kobe, And he said last time he talked to Kobe was at a championship game or something, which I guess someone did some math and said that's 2 or 3 years ago that Shaq had not talked to Kobe, which in their brain is a little bit weird. But they made this, well, even Shaq said, look, we don't tell people that we love them enough. And everyone says that because everyone comes to that conclusion. Go tell someone you love them, Living forever. Does that fix everything? Nobody dies. You have Kobe forever. Well, it depends, right? What if Kobe was a prodigy basketball player, and when you're in your 20s and 30s, that's important to you and it's important to him. And then you go on living. Is it still important that he was you were a really good basketball player? Yeah, it was funny. I haven't done that in like 100 years. I know, right? We should try to see if we could do it again. And you get out there and you get bored again. He's like, yeah, I already had this mastered. Let's go do something else. All right. And it becomes like whatever. We like to think that our God, our one God, central consciousness, whether he or she be the universe or an entity, as Michelangelo would paint, as the Catholic Church would have you believe, a very Caucasian guy. Isn't that weird? It's just so bizarre. A white Jesus and a white God. Wow, aren't we privileged? But, God living forever? You think about it for a split second, you think, oof, that is a huge responsibility. Unless God is doing the same sort of little trip we're taking, it seems like hell, wouldn't it? Which is why, I have no real instinct, I don't even know what to say here, indicator or whatever, but the notion that we're all the same being and that we're just living on top of timelines, like you're me and I'm you, which is why if I hurt you, I feel bad because I've hurt myself. That really just makes the world and the whole universe, all the Matrix characters make amazing sense. Now, it does kind of seem like even if that were true, we've got a lot of NPCs in the universe and not the gray face NPCs in the woke movement, but the one that I talk about, which is true fictitious characters that we invent, just like World of Warcraft, to pass out quests, and they're the bosses that we go and kill, that run this planet. They're just there to create strife and create tension. Maybe some of them are positive. I don't know who I would point at that's positive that I would think wasn't conscious. But boy, let's bring it the reptile thing, right? Take, this just occurred to me. This is going to be cool. Okay. On that note, take David Icke's famous, everyone who's bad in the universe is a reptile, shape-shifting reptile, right? They shape-shift into the queen or whatever, right? Your local sheriff. And then take The Matrix, the movie, where, Agent Smith would, shapeshift into anyone. You just take over your body and be you if you happen to need to be in your area at the time. And then take this NPC idea and just simply say that, well, they're there. They materialize as an algorithm response to your perception of the universe because you actually create your own universe. One of the things, I think I've attempted to explain this many, many years ago, but let me do it again since we're talking about perhaps living forever. What if we do create the universe as a personal response to our belief systems and our experiences in this world? And what if the Matrix is simply trying to give you what you want? And so, take my world. 70s, fantastic. 80s, fantastic. Now, again, my family was broke at times. My dad and I were broke. Let's put it that way. My other family members, they all had money, but he and I were broke together, fighting through the world. And, I was wearing shitty clothing. And, it was just like, I had to get my own jobs. I would get my own job with a W-2 at 13, lying, saying I was 14. Okay, so we pushed through, but then I get to California, 87, 88, 89, just fantasy world. Even 90 was pretty damn awesome. By 91, life got different. George Bush Sr. is about to finish his term, destroying the world, raising taxes, all this other stuff. 90s got dark. 90s got dark. 21st century is sort of this weird, I don't know. We've had war on terror now for 20 years. Thank God Trump is stopping that. But at the same time, we have sort of the most poppy culture we've ever had. Your Gagas and your Katy Perry's and, there's all this auto-tune crap. Some people try to keep it real. But I think I did mention this, but when I was at Electronic Arts, we were trying to build something massive, a $320 million website. I did the initial architecture. Then I had another buddy of mine who got hired about a year later. He came in to do the other part of the architecture. He and I became real good friends. We're still friends to this day. But it was rough and it was hard. And we saw gobs of waste going around, just millions of dollars getting shoveled out the door for useless consulting firms that were just bull-faced liars, bad contracts. And eventually all that negativity kind of pooled together. Some really not so amazing employees got some pretty high positions because they had done various things on the side to get those positions. I'll let you fill in the blanks. And it ended up by September 11th, I should say September 10th, let's just say, it was really dark. And there was all these rumor sites writing really horrible things about the company. I mean, it got so bad that, I had an associate that got utterly destroyed online. And she actually was told by my boss, who was a total asshole at the time, that I probably wrote it about her. I mean, just an amazing lie that caused just he was like a fucking Iago, that guy. But he really polluted her brain and made her think I did it. Now, unbeknownst to her, I was being attacked outside the company completely because someone randomly found my personal website and they gave me the Wanker of the Week award in England. And then some people from EA UK, who I knew, a lot of the people in UK, I must not have known these people. They didn't know who I was, and they were jumping on the bandwagon. They were talking about getting me fired, and it was just a bunch of bullshit. It was just a bunch of people griefing me for about a month or whatever. And, I was shocked, but I was like, this is the experience of being online. It was like getting trolled in by 2001. Yeah, sorry, 2001. And so my boss actually came up to me and told me that he told her that I did it. He accused me of it right in my face. I'm like, dude. And I go, why do you think I did it? And he goes, because they yelled about me in there and they never talk bad about you. Oh, okay. So maybe you're saying I'm actually a horrible person and they just decided to not say anything about me. It's sort of what the backhanded thing was. And they had to talk about a lot of people. It was just stupid. But I had to take this woman and I said, I went right to her. I didn't let a minute pass, and I said, look, we need to talk really fast. Like whenever you got a second, like today. And she was really kind about it. And she sat down and I don't think she entirely believed what I was telling her, which is so sad. But I had to tell her across the table. I said, look, I've only read a little bit of this stuff because someone forwarded a piece of it to me. It's atrocious. I don't have any time to write this crap. I don't put that negative energy out there. So I have nothing to do with this thing about you. I know this Sunil is trying to hurl it around. And I think I even said, that's his name, by the way. I said, look, that dude is a writer. That's what he is in real life. That's his profession. He was a writer and editor, or not editor, maybe. He wrote a cover article in Time magazine. Like, he's the writer accusing me of writing something about you. It's like a little bit of irony there, right? Turned out that once they laid off the first 350 people, one of her employees, I suspect was probably the person who wrote it because he flipped out in his cube and he was all into conspiracies and stuff, like crazy ones. Like he thought our badges were two-way communication things. And I had taken advantage of the fact that our group was called Front End Development. What's the acronym? FED. So I created like these federal like SWAT team jackets, with FAD on the back. And I took a sheriff's badge I had found scanned online. And I went into Photoshop and cleaned it all up, put our logo in there, put it on the front. And then we had stickers made that we would put on things that were our property and our pictures. We print out big giant 30-inch, plotter pictures of what we were making, which are gorgeous websites. We put these badges or we put them in the artwork. Anyway, he was like, see, this guy's a Fed, and he was just nuts. And he had to be dragged out by security. I mean, there's some people that get escorted by security, but they don't cause any issues. It's just a matter of protocol. This dude was yelling, screaming, and yelling about her, calling her all these names. I wasn't there when it happened, but it was the day of. And my employees were like, God, it was freaky, man. This dude started screaming and yelling. We thought, we didn't know he was going to kill anybody or whatever. This is before mass events, right? So I'm like, there's your, and he was a community dude. So he was a writer, and it's like he's out there trolling websites and stuff, trying to develop community for us, right? And he must have just dropped this off. But anyway, everything got dark. Everything. Personal stuff got dark. The company got dark. We're trying to succeed. We're working around the clock. I mean, we're working to the point we don't sleep anymore. I mean, we did, but it was rough. And then this 9/11 thing happens. And then all the other stuff happened after that, right? The economy crashes. We're losing our company. Our deal with AOL went south because they lied. And so I feel like, did I crawl over into that other dimension or create it in this world because I was feeling it, and my program simply goes, okay, he's being negative. We'll give him all the negativity he wants. Oh, he's feeling really negative. Okay, what can we give him that's a mind-blowing negative moment? Boom, this terrorist attack happens and changes the entire world. It was like, when that moment happened, we all walked through a barrier, didn't we? And we got to crawl back through that Stargate, go back to our world before that shithole change happened, right? Now let me ask you. I bring that up because, well, how many other times would that happen if you lived a long time? Let's just say a long time. Some pretty nasty crap has happened all over the world, especially in Europe, with the whole history of Europe. And I'm not saying anything specifically bad about Europe, but think about it. We've had a lot of action over there. We've had Caesars, and we've had Catholic churches and crusades, and we've had, people, had their heads guillotined off, including the guy that invented the guillotine had his head cut off by it. How ironic. But we've warred and we've warred. There's the story of Job, right? I mention it every once in a while. And the psychological thing that is never explained in the story of Job is that God, he's kind of a dick in that story. He makes his bet with the devil. Devil gets to destroy all of Job's everything, his crops, his wife, his children. They all die. He's completely by himself. And he doesn't turn away. He doesn't turn his back on God. Well, then he does it again. The devil does it again. God allows that guy to get wasted one more time. And then finally, after 2 times, God says, all right, enough. You see, he doesn't change his faith towards me. You can go away now. And then the way they tell the story is that God gave him everything again. More children, a wife, more children, crops, all that good stuff. It's all good. But the truth of the matter that's never explained, because it is a fictional story, is that his psychological damage would be so unbelievable. He'd be in a padded room somewhere. He would be utterly mentally incapable of trusting the third round of things, because at any minute in his life, in his psyche, it's all going to be taken away again. So don't get too close to your children. Don't get too close to your wife, because they're all going to go away. All right? That's the story of Job. If you live 300 years, you would be Job. If they didn't live 300 years with you. Let me ask you this. When you think about living forever, do you think about everyone else living forever with you? And I don't mean maybe forever, but a really long time. Do you want, at some point, everything that's being postponed will come to pass. Your death, if you don't live forever, will come. And then what are you going to do? You're going to be afraid of death? You're going to be ready for death? Let's say that you even skip a few generations of your own family. You have several different wives. Maybe because you can't be with one person for 300 years. Who the hell knows? She lives 300 years too. And can you do it? Can you live forever with somebody? Maybe you can. Maybe you can't. Talk about growing apart. Damn, that algorithm would mean a completely different thing if you lived even 200 years. Especially if she did too. I'm always going from the male perspective. I do apologize, ladies. Just flip the genders. Or whatever gender you like to associate with. The goal of this episode is to get us to think about this in a much more healthy manner, in my opinion. Now, am I trying to get you to a point when someone passes, you're like, whatever, you die, whatever? Hell no. Hell no. It'll never happen anyway, but I wouldn't make that the objective anyway. You know, the whole thing about dying is sort of like, well, you don't want to die young because you have more things you want to do. We talked about this several times. But at some point, our bodies will start giving away in almost completely randomly different ways. Isn't that interesting, right? Well, how'd they pass away? And it's always a different story. Unfortunately, cancer, because of our society today and how we adopt so much toxicity in at least America, and we ignore all the cures to it. Again, temporary cures for the current instance you have. You must clean up your diet in order to not have a relapse. But honestly, you take certain medicines every single day, vitamins, you treat yourself well, you probably never die of that particular thing. But at some point, you know, a tube in your brain will just fatigue and collapse and you'll be done. A good friend of mine just had a stroke about 6 months ago. And he is in part of the film special effects group. He is 76 as of last month. He's a brilliant man. He has been amazing his entire life, and he is celebrated by everyone in special effects as being sort of the godfather of pretty much CG, in terms of being one of the first dudes to really embrace it hardcore and make movies like Tron. And he is obviously completely sentient. He just lost partial movement in his left side, and he's rehabilitating right now and taking it very, very seriously. And for those of you who don't know, you know, he taught me this, that when you do have a stroke, your first year of rehabilitation is your most important year, because after a year, your ability to regain anything diminishes significantly. So you really, really, really need to push it in those first 12 months. And he's following all the advice. But he told me he has had an amazing spiritual experience without any drugs. And he and I are the ones that drop acid together. He's like one of my best friends in the whole world. But I picked him up to go to Syd's service. And he was telling me, you know, he told me days before this whole thing happened at Syd's thing, but he told me, he goes, look, I don't just see anyone anymore like I used to. He goes, I see someone's spiritual force. I see their whole being, which is very similar to some of the visual effects you see in the movie Lucy with Scarlett Johansson when she was on that drug and she went outside. You've talked about it a couple times. She just saw like the ethereal life force moving through all things. Sort of exactly what he described to me, which in one level is wonderful. He's having this amazing epiphany, this amazing, profound, daily, second to second experience as a result of incurring something that will most likely leave him with some form of handicap for the rest of his life. So he really made some sweet ass lemonade from some pretty sour lemons, you know? And if I wasn't making this show, I probably wouldn't have understood a lot of things he said, and I probably would have to ascend to his level of consciousness to experience what he's experiencing. But because we share all of our thoughts, and I have pierced every cork in my consciousness to make these episodes, I feel like I'm there with him. I feel like I was there back in 2013 And I've documented it in episodes where I sat at the beach with my little book and I looked out and I started envisioning everyone as life beings. And then I started watching how we as little blips of life force group together and clump together. It's very interesting. If you just look at when you people watch in public, think about it. Not so much in an airport where no one knows each other, but look at it on a beach. We have friends and family members all getting together, random strangers that don't want to be alone, who go up and talk to someone just to have a conversation. The name of the game is to not fantasize about living forever, unless perhaps you're writing a story that needs that sort of narrative, but to really work at appreciating what you have at every level of detail. And I think it has to do with not only mutual experiences that you share with other people, which the more intelligent that you get, the more isolated you will become in life. And thus those conversations will be tougher to have in any level of satisfaction, which is why I made this show and I found all you. That way we can have them together, right? I think one of the biggest questions we can ask at this point in the conversation is, what does it mean to be alive? What is being alive? What is it? Is it just having a heartbeat? Being on a respirator? What is it? A very interesting thing happened. A friend of mine's father is dying of Parkinson's. He's in his early 80s. And he's starting to get to the point where the Parkinson's is starting to make it difficult to breathe. And so they had to do a tracheotomy on him to solve the problem once and for all. But they gave him an option of putting his father on a respirator. And then a doctor said, don't do that. Don't put your dad on a respirator. And he said, why? And he said, because that's the end of his life. The idea is that you think you can have a respirator, which means they put a giant tube from your mouth down into your lungs and they keep you alive, right? They pump oxygen into you. And the notion is that you think you're going to be able to be upright and working on your computer and writing things down or whatever. You're on your back. Maybe staring at the ceiling. And then the problem is you typically lose all of your capabilities in that stage. You fully atrophy down to nothing. And then you're alive because the machine's keeping you alive. And now a family member has to turn you off. And this doctor who puts people on respirators said, I did that to my father, and then I had to take him off of it. And he goes, it haunts me every single day that I had to turn him off. And it's interesting to hear a doctor have that emotional experience because doctors are seeing life and death constantly. But when it was personalized, it really hit him hard. Now, I'm not saying, I'm not giving you any medical advice whatsoever. You got a young person who's going through a serious injury. I would do it no matter what. Keep them alive because they're probably going to heal up and they're going to eventually wake up and it'll be okay. But for someone in hospice, it might be a slightly different consideration. I think that one of the things that plagues some folks is this notion of kind of leaving a mark on the world, leaving something behind that is never going to be forgotten. So you're like, okay, I'll be dead, but my paintings will be hanging here. My music will be played on the radio. And it is a fascinating thing when that happens, when someone actually does create that. Let's take some for instances, right? When will Bach, Mozart, and Beethoven cease to be played? When will Shakespeare cease to be performed? When will we stop looking at, Michelangelo, Leonardo, Picasso, Rembrandt? When will we stop looking at these paintings? Of course, I'm excluding 99.9% of all amazing people. It will be potentially, for those examples I just gave, which are some really high-end cream on the crop, cream on the top examples that have already survived hundreds and thousands of years of weathering. Think about Egypt. When will those pyramids cease to amaze man? Never. And so you can't get caught up in these algorithms of purpose. And hey, maybe it's I'm not here to tell you not to, man. Quite frankly, do it, because I'll probably love your stuff too. Some people could think that's what it means to be alive, to strive for this indelible mark on society, on the world. What I like about classical music, Shakespeare, fine art, and a wonder of the world, being the Great Pyramids, is that it's global. Everybody gets it. Doesn't matter where you're from. You take anyone out of a jungle, probably especially out of a jungle. Imagine this. This is a great example, right? Let's go to Peru. Let's go to the rainforest. Let's grab a tribe that's never, ever met man. And we'll define that by the fact they don't have some appliance that somebody's given them from the mainland. The populated areas. And then let's get the most brilliant architect, structural engineer. So we take one male or female from one, and one male and female from the other. Maybe take one of each. And we put them right in front of the Great Pyramid of Giza. And we say, behold. What do you think about that? The scientific folks are going to be like, well, hey man, 2.3 million rocks stacked up in a way that we can't figure out how they did it. We've got some theories, but they're all crap. Amazing. Look at all the engineering that was around whenever these things were built. I see pi. I see Pythagoras theorem. I see all kinds of structural integrity issues that they figured out. I see a 50-foot, 150-ton rock with less than a 500th of an inch deviation down the whole line of this stone. But then you have the primitives, quote unquote, looking up going, this just blows my mind. They touch a rock and they try to move it and they're like, oh my God, that's really huge. Or maybe they whistle a phrase and one of the rocks starts floating away. Maybe they're like, yeah, man, whatever. Isn't that interesting that that's sort of a global phenomenon? There is a metric there that we never really talk about. It's a form of living forever, isn't it? What is a pharaoh's belief? A pharaoh's belief, as long as their name is spoken, they will live forever. Well, there's a lot of pharaohs that are going to live for as long as man is present in the universe, at least originating from this particular planet. I mean, imagine, just take it one step further, especially since I got at least another half inch on here. We, at some point, the matrix turns off. We get sucked out of the system. Now we're wherever we originated. Either we're human-like or we're not or whatever. But let's just say we're souls floating around the universe or something. Hopefully it has a little more tangibility than that, in my opinion. Even take the biblical definition of heaven, which is, I don't know quite if it's defined as we have had it portrayed in movies throughout the years, but we're sitting around a table talking to each other. We get through the basics. What did you do last time you were there? How'd you die? Whatever. And then we start to talk about what we remember from our lifetimes. And maybe we're sitting at a table with someone who lived in the 1800s, someone who lived in the BCs, and us in the 21st century. And we start talking about things, and because maybe we have divine knowledge, we could understand each other's phrases. 21st century person should be able to conceive of all the other people's stories, but could the person in the BCs really understand listening to Journey at an arcade in Derby, Kansas, and the amazing sound of Space Invaders thumping the ground while someone is pew-pewing the asteroids next to you, or killing that little flea that falls down in Centipede? Does our subjectiveness follow us around? How would our subjectiveness work with living forever? You really like Journey. Love and touch and squeezing, right? You really like video games. You really like whatever. And then, what do you think 100 years from now? Is it silly or is it still endearing? Does it turn into more of a symbol of memory of a wonderful time when you were younger? Does your youth and adolescence spread out or rebirth if you were to live 300 years? At 150, do you go back to being 15 again? Can you imagine if our actual physical age swayed at like a sine cosine wave? Never quite going back to obvious infancy. Imagine that. Oh my God. He's a baby again. He's one of the smartest kids in the school. I'm trying to make an episode where that cathartic moment when we find out that we've lost someone, especially, because there's nothing more valuable than a person. Nothing more valuable than a person. And we don't talk about it, right? You know, some people, what was interesting, okay, so I'll give you one that was very pleasant thing that occurred that I hadn't really imagined. When Syd was not doing terribly well his last year of life, although he really looked like he was making a recovery, and then all of a sudden it was like poof, which you need to realize that can happen as well. I did want to ask him a couple things. You know, I wanted to ask him about, what were his plans after passing? Is he going to be cremated? Will he be buried? Is he going back to someplace in Michigan or something? And he kind of was a transient kid because his dad was a preacher. He ended up being cremated and urned and entombed, in this amazing place. And they gave him some options. This is so Syd. This is like, I was so happy. Inside this kind of mausoleum place, you put all those entombments in those boxes, they gave those who buy places to be. He bought a really beautiful place with this. It's just when you walk in the entrance, you walk straight to it. And they gave him two options of what they have in the catalog. One was like a kind of a Venus de Milo kind of character, if I remember right. And the other one was like a Roman pillar with those, sort of, I don't know what you call them, the grooves that go down the column, right? And of course, Syd went, nah, I'm going to have one design. I'll design one and then I'll have it made. And so he did this unbelievable thing. He created this futuristic pillar that kind of looks like a single petal had bloomed at the bottom, and then the rest of it was like this smooth capsule of a pillar. And then we didn't realize this until afterwards. He had it mounted in this little inset thing such that it looks like it's floating. Syd, he's just that way, man. Utterly brilliant. Had it all planned out. It was already there before he passed. He must have paid a pretty penny for it too. But I also wanted to ask him the question because he's so scientific. I wanted to ask him, are you going to try to come back and visit us? Because I had that experience with Walt Disney. I thought, well, I know this is the way it works. I don't give a shit what anyone else thinks. I know this is the way it works. So are you going to do it? Come to find out, his partner asked him that question. And I guess without batting an eye, I don't know if I've said this in an episode. If I have, I apologize. Probably means more in this episode than anything. But he, I guess, said just instantaneously, he was like, when you see the unicorn, that's me. Now, let's rewind a little bit here. Unicorn? Well, I've been at Syd's house. There's no unicorns in the whole place. There's all kinds of other things repeated all over the place that he loves. No unicorns. But now, what project did he work on where unicorn was a very important character? Blade Runner. Gaff folded a unicorn in the last scene when Deckard finds out he's a replicant. But he also had the vision of a unicorn, which was cut from Ridley Scott's movie Legend with Tom Cruise, that he cut it into Blade Runner, and he gave Deckard a vision when he was falling asleep, I believe on the piano, of seeing a unicorn. And then, of course, Gaff folds the unicorn at the end to say, I know you have this implant in your memory, so I'm telling you that you're a replicant. And, of course, Gaff's line is repeated at the end of the film, which was utterly brilliant. Too bad she won't live. But then again, who does? Meaning, she'll die, but she'll die like all of us whenever we do die. Not a 2-year limit, right? So his partner said to me, because Syd's favorite show was The Simpsons, And he said that he turned it on just to kind of do what they did. I mean, man, I would have been bawling my brains out if this was like my girlfriend, my wife's favorite show. And I'm doing it within a week of her passing. But anyway, the show's going. In the middle of the episode, he said there was a unicorn. And he said the funny thing was, the interesting thing was, is it wasn't part of the story. It wasn't used as a prop for a joke. It was just there. And there you go. Don't know. That seems pretty amazing, doesn't it? So let me know if you've ever had the thought of at least living a lot longer than you live now. And what were your objectives when you had that thought? And let me know if you think about the ones around you living with you at the same slowed down pace. Let me know if you've had the thought of being cursed with being immortal. And if you think it's a curse, why? If you don't think it's a curse, why? I guess one of the best questions I could ask you rhetorically is to say, when's the last time you called someone that you love and told them that you love them because you haven't said it in a while? A friend, a family member, whatever. The only thing I was going to say at Syd's services that no one else said was that the one thing I don't think that we ever thank people for, even though it's implied, is we don't thank people for inviting us into their lives to share their lives with them. And Syd and Roger invited me in their lives 20 years ago, and I loved every single second of it. I mean, there was never a negative moment around me with those guys, definitely not between us or between them. I mean, it was euphoric. It was fantastic. And that's one thing I wanted to say. But of course, you know, and these are things I would have definitely said to Syd had I known he was at the door. But I didn't say it. And I don't think, there's anything, he can hear me say it today, so he's good. There's something about saying it to someone right before they go. The only time I've ever had this experience, and then I'll close off this episode, is I've said this once before, but since we're on this sort of moment, I had a very, very good friend of mine, and just a guy I looked up to like crazy, pass in his 40s. I think he's about 46 when he passed of just a spontaneous brain tumor out of thin air. No history of cancer in his family whatsoever. And I used to go back and visit my hometown every 4th of July. And I invited him to my 4th of July in 2001. They agreed to come over because I always go to their house and spend hours and hours and days visiting them. And they agreed. And then the 4th of July comes and they don't show up. And I'm like, that's really weird. So I went over to their house and I'm looking in the windows and they're not there. And I thought, well, they got family members all over the place. Maybe they just forgot or whatever, just decided to do it. Well, the truth was he had a grand mal seizure 2 days earlier and he was in a cancer ward, either in Houston or Wichita or something like that. He was in bad shape. I didn't find out until I got back home. I was totally bummed, and then I was extra bummed to find out that he had this issue. But then again, I didn't know it was going to be incurable, life-threatening against 2001. I knew nothing about alternate methods of healing. And so when I went back the next year, they had told me he's still alive. He'd had at least one procedure on his tumors, but they said, look, man, this stuff's super aggressive. It doubles in size every 40 days. He said, I don't want any more surgeries. I don't want any more drugs except for ones to get rid of the pain, which must have been like headaches or something. But he was a big, strong dude, right? It's sort of like that rock creature in the Never-Ending Story, right? The one that said he was this big, strong, literally a mountain of rock, and he was looking at the nothing that was coming, and he said, something to the effect, I've got these big, strong hands, and there's nothing I can do. That was my buddy. It makes me emotional to think about it right now. This was the dude I was supposed to grow old with, He's going to teach me how to fix Harleys and old trucks. And so we were supposed to be doing with our lives, at least at this point. But I got to go up to him, and I was relatively cognizant of this world at that point. I was like 32 or so. And I just told him, I said, look, because he was sort of drugged out a little bit, but he was fully aware, but he was just sort of, his motor mechanics weren't there because his brain had been damaged. And he was just this big, burly dude, man. And that's just hard to watch, And I just told him, I said, look, because he couldn't really talk back to me. It was sort of mumbly, And I said, look, one, I told him I loved him. But I told him, I think the one thing that us boys want to accomplish in our lifetime is becoming a decent man. That's our goal. And I told him that he did it. He made it. And then I gave him a hug. And he gave me a hug back. And then I left. And I'm looking back at the big comfy chair he was sitting in. He's watching TV. He's got his kids there and his wife. And I knew the second I turned my head to walk away, that was it. I would never see him again. And I think within 30 days of me being back home, he had passed. And I just think, what a shame, man. All that mentorship just floated away with his soul. Because it's one thing to walk in someone's footsteps, I could go off and learn the things that I know that I'd want to learn with him. And maybe I'll find someone like that in my life, I have found amazing people, trust me, of course. They've taught me different things that are amazing. But it's the style of that person that made it special for me. Because every time I visited him, he'd take me in his garage that he built with his own hands. And which is this big warehouse kind of garage. And he'd have a Harley there or something. He'd have 2 bikes usually, one that he's finishing up and one he's about to work on. He'd pull the, big, tarp off of one of them, and he'd say, this is my new one, man, and he's a very soft-spoken guy. He'd have like an old truck up on blocks, just all taken apart, He's just fixing one little panel at a time, one little thing, looking for a part here and there, And it just really made me reevaluate everything that I have. And it made me reevaluate myself as a person because, maybe I'm that for other people. I mean, I do have a kid. I try to be that to her, of course. And I'm sure over time that'll just become more significant to her. But, taking care of yourself, not getting into risky situations for no reason, not losing your cool to blow up your life, It's because of moments like that life is precious, man. That's how I know it's precious. It's because I lived through that loss, and I don't think his soul is the slightest bit dead, I think he's floating around. I've never had any experience with him that I know of, like, coming back to say hi or something. Perhaps he has and I missed it, but, I don't know. If you live forever, would you get to a point where you'd have an argument with someone you love that you never wanted to have because you live forever and you just eventually you get so frustrated? Or maybe you just become numb and he and I are just sitting on a porch looking at traffic go by. We're like 400 years old. Maybe that's bliss. Maybe it's nothing. Who knows, right? Anyway, I wanted to heighten your awareness of this I wanted to record my own emotions while they're very, very fresh. And I hope this is valuable to you. I do appreciate you. I know it's always impersonal because it's over the internet, and I don't know you. 99% of you I don't know. And for those of you I've talked to or met or whatever, I get a tiny slice of you. But we're sharing this journey together, right? We really are. So, just in closing, have at those questions. Give me your answers and wherever you want to give them to me. I'll do a short bumper today because I think I've been beating that up. Please like and subscribe. I always forget to say that. Like the people that really pound it into your head, they do get a lot of subscriptions, and they do it right from the beginning of the episode. My style is to earn it and then see what happens, right? But deepthoughtsradio.com is where everything is. There's video, audio, there's social media. There's a couple ways to donate, a couple products I just like that I refer to you guys. I make no money off of them. There's a store for season 5 t-shirts. I'm actually getting mine in here shortly, so you'll start seeing me wearing them myself. And then there is a channel all dedicated to season 1, which you won't find on this particular channel because they were all remastered much, much better. Some of them significantly shorter. So get up there if you want to see the first 100 episodes, plus a couple special reports. So anyway, tell someone you love them. Take a minute out of your life to meditate on this whole subject matter. Bring yourself some peace. And take care of yourself and someone else. Because I will see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.